Hey everybody, JJ Jerez, Meghan Angley, Jesse Montano here at the Inverness Hotel. Media Day 2024. We're officially underway on the season. Training camp starts tomorrow. We heard from a handful of players and Coach Bednar, guys. Good to hear from the players again. Good to see them again. Good to get back in the swing of things.
It's nice to just get back in the routine. It's like, oh, this feels more comfortable and natural, that we're back in our natural habitat talking to the guys. But everyone looked good. Everyone looked healthy. You could tell that they took advantage of a longer summer than they wanted. But no, it was good to be back in there.
Yeah, starting with the players, we heard from Nathan MacKinnon, Devon Taves, Cale Makar, and Jonathan Drouin. What stood out, Megan, to you on just what the players said? We'll get to Jared Bednar. I think he had a lot more interesting things to say. But as far as the players go, what did you like?
I don't know that I had positive or negative feelings about it. I appreciated, I found it valuable, Nathan MacKinnon's answer about his summer training and it being an emphasis on recovery this offseason, just because the way that he likes to play hockey, we all can note, definitely takes a toll on the body. And so there was a little bit more emphasis on recovery rather than a rigorous off-season training.
No, yeah, it was more of a recovery summer for me. Definitely want to do more than I did. Hopefully I'm decent this year. It's just a lot of miles on the body every season, so I'm just trying to take some off as best as I can. Definitely doing things every day, just not super intense and putting more miles on the body than I need to. So yeah, just trying to be smarter.
And I don't expect him to be a different player going into this season. I think that he's going to build upon what he did last year. But you do like to hear that from a guy who has come under criticism in the past for being a little bit too crazy about that routine. I think it's nice to see that he also recognizes when he needs rest as well.
Just again on MacKinnon, Megan talked to Cal Ritchie this last weekend in LA, and he brought up the fact that he was able to go to Vail and train with Nathan MacKinnon and some of those other guys up there. So I just asked Nate about that. What did you see from him? And what I thought was interesting about his answer wasn't necessarily what Nate saw, although he did go on to say that he was impressed, but that it was the other guys up in Vail, the Sidney Crosbys, Connor McDavids, that were saying, who is that kid? Where did he play last year? How old is he? And that's the type of stuff that, again, we talked about it at the NHL Awards when Nathan MacKinnon won the Ted Lindsay. When you hear that type of, talk coming from other players, let alone players of the stature that we know go up to that camp in Vail, I don't know, that kind of took my expectations for Cal Ritchie up a little bit, because this isn't potential teammates saying something about him. These are other top players around the league saying, who's that kid? Because he looks impressive.
I wanted to add to that because of Jared's answer about a question regarding Cal Ritchie started with, it's not just me making the decision. And he went on to say CMAC and Sakic. But what I immediately thought of when Nate gave that answer is that by committee, this is also a decision that's going to be made among the players. And so if Cal Ritchie is making a good impression among potential Avalanche teammates like that, I do think that is going to be an influence on his ultimate decision if he gets to stay up with the Avs in the NHL.
Both Devon Taves and Cale Makar mentioned how they're excited about the defensive depth that's coming into training camp this year. Cale Makar even brightened up when he was asked about it. Your takeaways from that?
Well, because it's funny, I was going to ask them about that, and then Eric Dean from Mile High Sports asked about it, but I was going to ask, is it exciting? This is the first real shakeup that we've seen on the back end in 3, 4, 5 years. It's been a while since we've seen some new faces, and they both seemed excited about getting some guys in there. And Devon Taves kept mentioning, getting them bought into what we do, our culture, getting them rolled into what we keep doing. And so they seemed genuinely excited, and I was wondering if they would be, because, like I said, we just haven't seen this type of turnover on the back end for the Avs in a while.
Looking at Jared Bednar, much more thorough, well thought out, longer press conference from him. A lot of interesting things came out of his mouth. What stood out to you from Jared Bednar?
Well, he obviously fielded questions about Val Nichushkin. Every person did today, and I think Bednar had some of the more thoughtful insights on that. And I think what stood out is the realization that everybody in the locker room is going to have different feelings about Val Nichushkin. That's going to warrant different needs in terms of how trust gets rebuilt. And so Bednar couldn't speak to what's going to be needed when Val Nichushkin returns to rebuild that trust, because everybody's going to need to hear or see something different. And I think that's the most realistic take I've seen on it. We'll welcome him back with open arms. That's what Jared Bednar said, and he took a personal responsibility to support Nichushkin in earning that trust back as his coach, but there's a lot too that's out of Jared Bednar's hands, no matter how much support he shows Val, and it'll come down to Val and what kind of rehabilitation that he's done over this summer. Jared Bednar used the word specifically that he would need to stay out of trouble. And so I think that put into perspective the types of challenges that we're dealing with Val Nichushkin and his hopeful return. I think the other notable too is everybody seemed to corroborate the expectation that he will be back in November. And so I think that was maybe the clearest I've heard it spoken about since this summer when we heard from Landeskog and CMAC, and there was a lot less clarity around the situation.
So there's a couple different things, and to Megan's point, it was stuff that Jared Bednar said about the Val Nichushkin situation. He started with we're going to welcome him back with open arms, but then, like you said, he said there's got to be some forgiveness there. And he also used the phrase, time heals all wounds. Because I asked him, I said, the 6-month suspension wasn't up to the Avs, but was that maybe something that after something like this happening was needed? And that's when he said time heals all wounds. I think some time away really did help. But there was one other thing that stood out to me, because no one had actually used these words. And Jared Bednar was, to Megan's point, very supportive, said that we have to be in his corner, we have to forgive. But I believe it was you, Megan, who asked about expectations for players for this year. And he said, we go in there and we want to set expectations for what we expect of players, the commitment level. And, he listed several things. And he said, Val has let us down in that department the last couple of years. That's the first time we've heard someone say, let us down.
Discussions in the locker room or whatever. I mean, time heals all wounds. I think that, especially in the moment, and understanding, again, how good of a player Val has been for us and the impact that he makes on our team on a nightly basis, it's a tough loss. It's a really tough loss. So there's obviously emotions that come along with that, because you're, even today we're going to talk to our team exactly, trying to lay it out for them exactly what we need to see from everyone when it comes to effort and attitude and how much they care and how much they have to show that with their actions. And Val's kind of let us down in that regard for the last couple of years. It's a little different situation when you start dealing with someone's personal life. I do think Val cares. I do think that he's a really good teammate. So he's got some growing to do, and we probably have some forgiveness that needs to happen before we can get to the spot we want to be at.
And I think that's maybe part of the forgiveness part of it, is acknowledging what happened. Like, trying to dance around it, not saying that they are, but, if you try to dance around it, it's not that big of a deal. Hey, we're all just in it. Like, no. If you're going to move past it and he's going to stay part of this group, you've got to confront it. You let us down 2 years in a row in the playoffs. And I just think that that's where this whole healing process has to start, by Val Nichushkin raising his hand and say, I messed up, guys, and I let every one of you down, not just once, not just twice, but 3 times. I've let you guys down twice in massive moments, and I just thought that was an interesting acknowledgement, given how supportive Jared Bednar was. I didn't take that as him, like, getting in a dig at Val, but I took that as part of, like I said, we're healing, and we're not going to run from this.
Yeah, more on the Val Nichushkin stuff. Nathan MacKinnon was asked about what he wants to hear from Val Nichushkin on his return. He kind of said, I'm not expecting anything, right? Do you think he was just being tight-lipped, or was there some genuine, I'm just here for the hockey mentality there from Nate?
I think it's not necessarily tight-lipped. I still think he is revealing something about his needs for Val in his return, and it's what he needs to see. He mentioned that Val always comes in great shape, and that Val was playing hockey great right before this all happened. That's what Nate needs to see, that Val has done what he's needed to prepare physically for the season and stay in great shape, and that he is ready to continue playing hockey in the vital way that he has for the Avs, the past several seasons. And so I think that's what Nate's saying, and not what he needs to hear, but what he needs to see.
Anything else on the Val Nichushkin thing you want to get out?
No, just building on that, I think Megan's spot on, where Nate's saying there's nothing, there's no magic set of words he's going to come in here and say it's going to make it better. But I think Megan's spot on. They want to see his actions, not the words.
Right, absolutely. So we talked about the defensive depth. Jared Bednar talked about the competition coming into camp. Whoever shows best at camp is going to earn a roster spot. How excited are you guys to watch this competition? Who are you keeping the closest eyes on?
I'm so excited because the implications of the roster battles are bigger than just Freddie Olofsson in like the fourth line centerman position last year. It's a top 6 position on wing with Arturi Lehkonen not being available for this camp or preseason. And it's also going to be, the D-core is healthy, but there are so many options there. That's what makes it exciting too. I think that it's a third pair role that's available, but it could be elevated throughout the year depending on what they show early in the season. And so I'm looking closely at Sam Malinsky, who is an internal guy that's gotten some familiarity but lacks NHL experience compared to the others. And I'm looking to see what he does to use his familiarity with the organization to his advantage against guys who have very good NHL experience, good speed, good mobility. And I think that battle among the defensive group is actually what I'll be looking at really closely.
So maybe a little bit of a cop-out answer here, but so we got an update on Arturi Lehkonen, not expected to be a participant through any of preseason or training camp. We got an update on Gabe Landeskog-ish, where it really kind of sounded like we can squash the beginning of the season. Not that was like a real rumor out there, but based on stuff that Gabe and Jared had said, there was maybe a glimmer of hope, and then we can kind of squash that. And then they also brought up, we're expecting Val Nichushkin back. What I'm excited about is you are going to have 3 spots on this roster that you can kind of have fun and experiment with and get a look at some guys, knowing that, barring anything crazy on recovery for Lehkonen and Landeskog, that you've got the reinforcements coming. They're going to push some of those guys down. So you can get some looks on the bottom half of the offensive depth chart without having to make like any long-term commitments to guys being there. So I'm not necessarily, looking at any one player. I think it lends really well to Cal Ritchie getting at least 9 games, knowing that we're going to have some holes in this roster. But that's just what I'm excited for, is that you've got at least 3 spots in this roster that you've got to at least find plugs for the next few weeks, maybe next couple months. I just think that's going to create some really interesting battles, and you hope that it's going to bring the best out of some of these guys like Jean-Luc Foudy, like Cal Ritchie, like Oscar Olausson, guys who are competing for spots that maybe have players they need to climb over. Well, for at least this limited window, you're going to get a shot here. So that's what I'm looking forward to this week.
Yeah, it should be a fun, intense training camp. Of course, it kicks off tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. from Family Sports Center.
Can I give you one last thought?
Oh, sure.
Sorry, I didn't know if you were signed up. I just Justus Annunen was brought up, and it was the quote that Jared Bednar gave. He said, "I've got a lot of confidence in this guy." And it wasn't just what he said, it was the way he said it. We've talked about it a lot on the pod. This is an organization that has been very high on Justus Annunen for a while, and I just thought that was an interesting comment. Not just what he said, but like almost a little bit of like swagger that he had on it. Like, this kid, he's our guy, and I wanted to make sure we threw that in there.
Yeah. Any closing thoughts from you?
I love the Annunen comment. Standalone too, it wasn't as if Georgiev wasn't mentioned, but I think it's clear that Georgiev is expected to get fewer starts and share the workload with Annunen and the trust that he's built as such a young goaltender with the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. So, of course, like I said, everything kicks off tomorrow. We are ready for the season. All 3 of us will be there. Of course, we'll bring you another report tomorrow to wrap things up, but excited for the competition tomorrow. I think this is going to be one of the funnest camps we've seen around here in a long time. So thanks, everybody, for hanging out with us. Guerilla Sports.